turn our attention still to the state of Texas and what's going to be going on during the legislative session. And joining us on the phones this evening, we have Samuel Sheets. He's the policy director of Americans for Prosperity in Texas and AFP Texas. Sam, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Chad. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, tell folks just first a little bit about AFP and what you guys do over at AFP.
I'd love to. Well, first of all, I hope you all are staying warm. Man, it's been freezing cold, ice, snow and rain.
It's going to be that way, I think, for the next several days, unfortunately.
Yeah. But again, appreciate you having me on. A little bit about Americans for Prosperity Texas. We are a full-time grassroots advocacy organization. And what does that mean? What that means is we use a lot of campaign-style tactics, stuff you'd typically find in the lead-up to November elections, lots of events, lots of door-knocking, phone calls, mail, rallies, all of that sort of thing that you typically see for a political candidate or political party. We use those same tactics to push objective policy issues, regardless of party, to get bills moving through the legislature and hopefully get them to the governor's desk for his signature to be enacted into law. So we're very active here in Texas. We're in all the major cities. We've recently branched out into the Panhandle. We have a growing community in the Lubbock area, a full-time grassroots infrastructure, again, to push the policies rather than a political party or a political candidate. So it gives us a lot of freedom to do our work.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the priorities that you guys are going to be talking about in this session. And, again, as everyone talks about, this is a session that is different than any other session we've had, thanks to the pandemic. A lot of time where lawmakers will not be in Austin, it looks like, and that means a shorter or smaller window, really, to get some of these major issues passed. And one of the ones that I wanted to ask you about is taxpayer-funded lobbying, something that has been brought up for numerous sessions that got close in the last session, but did not get far enough, unfortunately, I think, for a lot of people out there. Talk about where AFP stands on that and what you guys are doing regarding that issue.
Absolutely. And before I go into that, every issue that we push for has one common theme going through all of it, whether it's healthcare, whether it's criminal justice, taxes, or in this case, taxpayer-funded lobbying. What the North Star, as we like to call it, something we're always aiming for, is to break down barriers that are standing in the way of people living their best life, living their shot of the American dream. So taxpayer-funded lobbying is a major barrier to people reaching their full potential because, especially nowadays, when money is really tight for folks, a lot of people out of work, businesses having to be work at restricted capacity if they're allowed to be open at all. Money is really tight right now for a lot of folks and for the state. So the fact that we are continuing to, at the local level of Texas, to spend millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars every single session to take it from the taxpayers and send it to a third-party middleman lobbyist firm in Austin is something that we really want to take a hard look at. I mean, it's one thing to say, it's an ethical concern, number one, but number two, it's a big monetary concern as well. Like I said, with money being so tight, do we really need to be spending millions of extra dollars to send it to lobbyists in Austin to lobby against things like property tax reform in 2019, to lobby against the constitutional amendment against the state income tax? These are the kinds of issues that the taxpayer-funded lobbyists are going against. These are things that are in the interests of we, the taxpayers. So we see a lot of problems with this, and like you mentioned, we got pretty close in 2019, close but no cigar. But we are not going to take our foot off the gas on this issue. But we're hoping to get even further this session, all the way to the governor's desk. But Chad, we got our work cut out for us. It's a pandemic session. It's always been a contentious issue, even in a non-pandemic session. So we have an uphill battle, but we're ready for it, and this is why our organization exists. These big issues.
Well, you've got a battle because you have every single, unless there's one out there that surprises me, every single city that opposes the ban of taxpayer-funded lobbying. They're all for it. They all want it to happen. And then you have the lobbyists themselves. They're pretty dug in. They don't want to lose any of this money. And then you've got the Democrats they're all for it, and then you've got some Republicans who are still they're dug in. They're listening, to other folks who are saying, no, I guess they're not listening to the taxpayers, in my opinion, but they're listening to the mayors in their cities. And to me, this is a very important issue because, as you said, not only is it money, taxpayer money on the local level, being sent to Austin and being sent to these different lobbyist groups, but it's also used to take more money away from the taxpayer on the statewide level. It hurts taxpayers across the board.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Chad. And the way that we see the issue is that local governments already have lobbyists without having to spend millions of extra dollars. Those lobbyists are your state representatives, your state senators from those areas where they are, right? We don't need a third-party middleman, if you will. A lot of the legislators that we talk to, when they get a phone call or an in-person meeting, from a mayor or a county commissioner or another elected official at the local level, that is a huge piece of influence. Like, why do we need the middleman? Let's get our local governments involved to talk to the legislature themselves. We don't need this third party millions of dollars when we don't have the money.
Yeah. You brought up criminal justice reform. What is that? What's going on in this session dealing with criminal justice reform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So criminal justice reform, if you haven't been living in a cave the past 11 months, has been a massive issue all across America. So we're hoping to make some much-needed reforms in Texas. And let me just say, Texas has been leading the way on criminal justice reform for about 20 years now.
Yes.
A lot of the federal stuff that we've seen, the First Step Act, prison reform in 2018, that was first experimented with here in Texas under Governor Perry in 2007. So when Texas does something on no matter, pick the issue of your choice, the rest of the country is watching. So we want Texas to continue to set the example for the rest of America on criminal justice reform. This year, we're really pushing for pretrial reform, also called bail reform. It goes by a couple different names, but it's all talking about the same thing. And we were so pumped to see Governor Abbott include that as an emergency item in his State of the State last week. So basically, we're looking to really revamp the pretrial bail system here in Texas to one that keeps the bad guys behind bars and lets the low-risk people, maybe it's their first time being arrested, maybe they were arrested for a very low-level crime, they've never done anything violent in their entire life, they just made a mistake. They're still going to be charged, but they sit in jail for weeks, if not months at a time, just because they can't come up with the bail money. In a lot of cases, just a couple $100s worth of bail money. So this policy is really ruining people's lives. Because if you sit in jail for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, guess what? You no-showed for work for 3 weeks. You're not going to have a job.
Yeah.
You probably couldn't make payments on your car, so the car is going to get repoed. Might get evicted from your apartment. So one little mistake can turn into the snowball effect, which completely turns people's lives upside down. So we think we can hit two birds with one stone on this issue, like I mentioned, by focusing on somebody's risk to the community. If they're violent, if they have a history of violence or a long rap sheet or not showing up for court, they should probably stay in jail. They probably should, giving the judges, obviously lots of discretion in that matter. But the low-level folks, the low first-time offenders, nonviolent folks, let them get back to work, to their families, to their communities, and then come back to court later. Don't just let them sit there because they couldn't come up with $200 or $300 or $400 worth of cash. It's a very uneven scale that we're looking to change.
Yeah, we're visiting with Sam Sheets, Policy Director for Americans for Prosperity, Texas. Let's also talk about another area that I know you're going to be focusing on, and those at AFP are going to be focusing on, and that is healthcare in Texas. What are we looking at healthcare wise in the state that people need to be concerned about and watching?
Yes, sir. So there's two main goals that we're trying to achieve for healthcare. And again, the common theme between all of these is access to quality and affordable healthcare. It has to be both quality and affordable. We're not going to choose one over the other because it wouldn't be worth it. So we want to see telemedicine, which has really taken off over the last year during the pandemic. We want to see a lot of the expansion to telemedicine, which is great for rural communities. If you live, an hour and a half, 2 hours away from a hospital, it can be really hard to get the medical care you need. Meanwhile, everybody these days has a smartphone or a laptop or an iPad or something like that where you might not need to drive, an hour and a half or 2 hours to get seen for a little sniffle or a little cough. So we want to see telemedicine continue to expand. And then the big one, which I am really, really excited about, is we're starting to take a look at some of the contracting procedures between physicians and advanced medical workers, like all the initial workers, your APRNs, your TRNs, your PAs, your this and your that. Basically, folks who have been to medical school, they've been state certified, board certified, letting them practice to the top of their license rather than having these outdated contracting procedures, which are known as delegation agreements. These are literally keeping our advanced medical workers on the sidelines in the middle of a pandemic when we need them the most. So that's something that's really exciting for us because for a number of reasons. I don't want to go too long, but it costs $0 to do it. They already know how to do this stuff. They're certified to do it. Let's just get them to work. They're sitting on the sidelines ready to go. 31 other states have already done this. Texas is one of the last holdout states that's still hanging on to this. So we're talking big monetary savings, and we're talking big increases to access. I can't say access enough. Access.
Visiting with Sam Sheets, Policy Director, AFP Texas. Sam, you're talking to folks in the Lubbock and West Texas area, Abilene, Wichita Falls, all over the state of Texas. How can people get involved in AFP if they want to get more involved and follow what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. Well, we have a big online presence. I invite everybody to check out our legislative agenda, our Texas-sized reform agenda is what we're calling it. If you go to afptexas.org, that'll take you there. There's a couple of links where you can click to get involved. Like I said, we have a growing community in the Lubbock area. We have some community activists ready to go also in Abilene. So we're in all the major cities, but pushing through West Texas and up into the Panhandle. We're out there. So hit us up on Twitter, hit us up on Facebook, check out our legislative agenda. We'd love to get you involved. But the common denominator here, Chad, is we need people to have a constant line of communication with their elected officials, state, local, and federal. Heard you talking about the federal stuff earlier. Nothing is going to change if our lawmakers don't hear from the people that they represent.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that is why our organization exists, is to connect the taxpayers, the constituents, with the decision makers, and just holding them accountable and also encouraging them when they are doing the right thing.
Yeah. Sam, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today. That's Sam Sheets, Policy Director with AFP Texas. Appreciate your time, Sam.
Thank you, Chad. You have a great night.